Here's my take on the Raiders. They picked 4th overall last year. Mm-hmm. They weren't that bad. Like they underachieved last year for what their roster should have been. I didn't think they were a disastrous roster. This year, they're playing more to the level of where I think they should have been last year. So when people look in a vacuum and they're like, well, last year they were this, and this year they're competing for a playoff spot, therefore they've gotten better, when I would say they're a similar team and they're just, a few things have gotten better so far this year.
A few things have gotten better, and they're on the right side of a bunch of close games.
Yeah, that too.
How's our financial plan coming?
Super! Chris, any advice?
With Western and Southern, preparing for your financial future can be easier than you think. Favorite receiver?
Huh?
To get started, visit westernsouthern.com.
Yeah, the Chiefs' defense is definitely bad enough to make Oakland look good again on offense and actually turn this into a game. But it's hard to see how the Raiders' defense can necessarily slow down Kansas City. So
what a crazy game they played. Was it week 2? Earlier in the year, Kansas City scored 28 points, all in the second quarter. Mahomes almost threw for 300 yards in the second quarter alone. He threw for over 400 in the game, and there was a 75-yarder negated by a penalty. I mean, it was ridiculous.
They stopped them for 3 full quarters and then conceded 28 in 1 quarter and lost.
All that said, this was a game where Mahomes actually, again, context here, could have played much better. Did not play great, despite all the stats. He left a few throws on the table. He had a fumble. This was back in the days when we were like, look, Mahomes' numbers are off the charts, but there's some scheme stuff in here. They're running wide open guys up the seam, and there's yards after the catch, and all these things happening. But his deep ball was fantastic in that game. The Chiefs' offense deep ball was fantastic in that game. I don't trust this Raiders secondary at all.
Yep. The Raiders, by the way, are one of the people waiting to take victory laps things. Everyone that loved their draft is just doing laps right now. It's like, At the moment, the greatest thing about your draft is that your 4th round pick is better than your 1st round pick.
Max Crosby over Cleveland Ferrell.
Right, Ferrell, which is not great. Right?
And so, the victory lap came when Trayvon Mullen had the game-clinching interception against Ryan Finley.
Yes.
And the Bengals. And Trayvon Mullen had a very good game.
But it's also true to say that, Josh Jacobs has been fantastic. The problem was never that Josh Jacobs is a bad player. It's that even if he's incredible, it won't matter.
It's the value of adding to, winning football games.
He is doing as good a job as anybody in recent years of overcoming not great blocking and generating more of his own yardage than anybody else. But last year, Saquon Barkley looked like the best back in the league by a distance, and the Giants weren't winning. This year, Saquon Barkley looks like crap because the blocking hasn't been there. So this is the same thing, right? It's like Jacobs may be doing amazing right now, but the point is, if the Raiders' offensive line, if he isn't able to sustain this level of overcoming blocking, or if the blocking gets worse, next year it won't matter. And ultimately, you'll have taken a guy in the 1st round whose production you could have gotten in the 5th.
We also said for the 2nd straight year, we kind of liked the Raiders draft if you just put it in reverse.
Yes.
Like their day 3 picks.
Down.
So Max Crosby was fantastic at Eastern Michigan. Good size and athleticism and all that stuff. Not surprised that he's been a pretty productive edge rusher. The previous year, they got Maurice Hurst. I still don't think you can look at the Raiders draft and say they got Cleveland Ferrell, they got Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, and Trayvon Mullen with their 4 picks in the top 40. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you could watch football this year and say that's been well done.
And that was the point,
That's the best way to spend those top 40 picks.
It was 4 picks in the top 40. You have a once-in-a-generation chance to make something special happen in a draft. And instead, you deliberately targeted conservative, middle-of-the-road picks. You went with solid as opposed to what could be spectacular.
Right.
To me, that just seems like a waste of an opportunity that doesn't come around very often.
I thought there were better opportunities there. So
and even if they all work out as solid, I don't think that actually changes that. So a lot of people are quote tweeting something I said, which was, this is a franchise-defining draft for the Raiders. It's just a shame what it's defining them as, right? And they're like, what do you think about that now? Honestly, I think the same thing, right? What you're defining your franchise as right now is average. And that just seems like a waste of 4 picks in the top 40. You want to define your franchise as ambitious, as going someplace. You don't want to define it as we want to stick to the middle of the road and win 8 games every year.
I also think, again, if you're an evaluator, if you could just be honest about what is driving wins and losses. I think if you looked at the Raiders team last year,
I wonder how much of it is they don't know.
Maybe they don't know. Because you hear people all the time. Like the big thing I think was the Falcons needed to work on this year. It was like, we got to get better at 3rd and 1. Last year 3rd and 1 screwed us, so we got to get better at 3rd and 1. Well, if you just get better at 3rd and 1 and everything else is bad, well, you're going to win 3 games like they have so far.
The period they went where they wanted to get tougher.
They're going to get tougher. We're just going to stop the run and get tough. So listen, here's my take on the Raiders. They picked 4th overall last year. Mm-hmm. They weren't that bad. Like they underachieved last year for what their roster should have been. I didn't think they were a disastrous roster. This year, they're playing more to the level of where I think they should have been last year. So when people look in a vacuum and they're like, well, last year they were this, and this year they're competing for a playoff spot, therefore they've gotten better, when I would say they're a similar team and they're just, a few things have gotten better so far this year.
A few things have gotten better, and they're on the right side of a bunch of close games.
Yeah, that too. Defense still a major question mark. Bottom line, I think Derek Carr cannot have a 5.5 average depth of target in this game. Like, unleash Derek Carr. Who cares if he throws 4 picks? Go full Jameis in this game. Go head-to-head with Mahomes. Go get him, Raiders. That's how you have to. You can't play conservative football in this one. You got to attack.
Derek Carr right now has the number 5 overall PFF passing grade.
Yeah, I mean, when they let him throw the ball down the field, he does it pretty efficiently.
10th in overall grade because
his fumbles have been really bad.
But 5th in passing grade.
When he throws the ball, let him throw the ball a little bit more. He can do it, and they've done a nice job. We're all taking the Chiefs. Well,
yes,
you and I are taking the Chiefs. I don't know what everyone else is doing.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.